Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This webinar today is around how to manage projects. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Michelle Fitzgerald. I'm a business consultant with Nimbus. I've worked here for a number of years and actually several times. So I keep coming back because I love it so much. And I'm excited to be showing you some of the tools that Nimbus has around managing project workflow. So also with me today is another Michelle Van Dyke. Michelle's part of our sales and marketing team, and she's going to monitor the chat as the webinar goes. And if you have, and she will go through the questions at the end of the webinar. So yeah, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So yeah, if but by all means, feel free to add questions to the chat as you go. So there are many aspects to actually managing projects, and Nimbus has lots of tools in the toolkit to assist with this, and that can go from, quoting and tendering the project to creating relevant jobs for the project, setting up budgets, managing materials and labours required. And I mean, that's just sort of like really the beginning. There's logging variations, raising claims, checking your progress against budget, as well as keeping all your documents in the right place. And that's not even the full picture. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover off in this short webinar today. So the aim of this is just to give you a taste of what we can offer here. So, I mean, one of the main aspects of project management is making sure that you're delivering your projects on time, within budget, and having the visibility of the information that you need to make decisions every step of the way through. So today's objective is about just giving you a taste of some of the tools that we've had. We're going to look at storing project documentation, looking at planning your resources and, recording that on jobs. And basically some of the reports that we have to help you make decisions based on the data that's been captured, knowing, potentially when something's going to blow out, or, how many variations there are and keeping an eye on those. So today's agenda, we're going to create a project. We're going to manage some materials, labour and variations. We're going to raise a claim, look at project documents, and we're going to check our costs against budget. And then there'll be some time for questions at the end. So let's crack on. Right, okay. So with projects, I mean, look, projects can come in, they can be any size really, depending on your industry, from massive projects with hundreds of jobs, potentially around civil contracting and construction contracts, down to smaller projects where there might be a number of jobs. And it also depends on whether you're a main contractor for a project or a subcontractor. That certainly can make a difference to the size of the project within Nimbus. So with any project though, there's normally a quoting or a tendering phase that happens. So you might respond to a registration of interest, or you might be tapped into some tender websites around your region, at which point you can tender for a job. So yeah, so essentially a quoting or a tendering process takes place. And we're going to assume that that's already happened in this case, and that we have, in this example, I've just set up a basic quote here for a new shop that's being built, and I've just based this around the construction industry. So we've got different schedules here for different parts of the shop. I mean, the quote could be quite a significant quote depending on the size of the project that you're pricing. But in this case, I've just given you an example here of some schedules that we're looking to do as an example. But one of the things to note here is the WBS code. Now, WBS represents a work breakdown structure. And within industries, there's normally a familiar work breakdown structure that takes place depending on what type of industry you're in. So with construction, contracts, a lot of the time this is broken down by trade. And so, for example, subcontractors, electrical, drain laying, plumbing, flooring, cladding, roofing, goodness knows what, as well as a carpentry trade. And then within that, there also might be design, foundations, and site works, P&Gs, things like that. So these can all form a schedule within the quote. And each line, you'll see here that each line that has a actual quantity and a value has a WBS code in it. And this is used in the project creation process. So with this project, with this quote, I'm going to save and commit this quote. Now it says that if it commits it, you can't change it. And that's cool because we're making an assumption here that we actually won the job. Yay. And so essentially this is the price that the customer has agreed to. And now from there, we want to actually create the project and the structure for that. So you'll see here in my jobs to quote report here, I've got my new shop. The status has updated to QA because that means that it's been accepted. So from this point, I want to create a project. So what I'm going to do here is, because I have no imagination, I'm going to give it the same number as my job number. And building a new shoe shop because one can never have too many shoes. And I've got myself as the supervisor. It's looking to start on the 1st of November. For an invoice type, so when we're actually producing invoices, we want it to be a contract style. And this template here, this relates to the template with regard to the work breakdown structure. Now over here, we've got an area for retentions. So not all contracts have retentions, depending on the industry that you're in or what your agreement is with the actual customer. If we want to have retentions, we can have 3 levels of retentions, which is not uncommon across the contracting sector. It might be like 10% up to 200,000, and then it might be 5% up to $1 million, and so on. Now this is a small contract, so I don't anticipate it going beyond 200,000. So I'm just going to apply that now, and at this point, that's actually created the project. So now, as you saw in the quote, we had the different sections, and so I would like jobs to be created reflecting those different WBS codes and the quote spread to those jobs. So what I need to do now is click on the spread quote button. That goes away and it takes the relevant lines off the main initial quote and pops them onto the jobs that we've created. So if I close out of that now, I can come to my project list, and here's my shoe project, my new shoe shop. And if I look here, we can see that it's created jobs for each of those WBS codes, and then it's spread the value for each of those sections across those jobs accordingly. Now, within Nimbus, it doesn't matter if your quote is hundreds of lines long or 5 lines long, it's that easy. So with the structural setup within Nimbus, it makes creating that project and setting up those jobs really easy, and we all like easy. So I've got a couple of other projects here that I've been working away on, so I'm going to focus on one of these now to give you an example of managing your resources against each project. And one of the cool things that we've got available in Nimbus is our quote orders package. Now, this is used predominantly to manage materials. So the materials that you need on site, you might need to order them, you might have them in stock, but this is a great interface to help you manage that. So I'm not going to dig into this deeply because there is actually another webinar on quote orders, but I just wanted to give you a preview of how this helps just see what is required and how easy it is to manage. So Here we've got our lines, our material lines from a project that I've been working on. Here we've got what's in budget and what was quoted. It shows us if we've got any of these items on hand, what's already been used on the jobs, what's sitting on order, and what's still required. So, so we can see here we needed 36.2 metres of Douglas fir. There's 20 metres already on order, so there's just over 16 metres still required, and so on. And really, at the end of the day, whenever we need to order anything, so when we're coming through and, we're looking at, if I look at our carpentry schedule, for example, I can come in here and I can see that I don't actually really have much on hand, so I'm going to need to order ahead. I need to make sure that I've got it when I need it. So I need some steel plating here. If I want to order that, it's as easy as just coming in here, saying how much I need, and then, just using these links up here, I can create a purchase order for the items that have an order quantity. If I want to take any from stock, then same sort of thing. I know I've got 5 on hand. I can click OK here. And then if I want to issue those items from stock, maybe get a picking list and go off down to the store and grab what I need, then I can do that. And it's really that easy to keep an eye on the materials that you need for your project. Excuse me. And then as variations are added to the project, because they aren't necessarily priced right at the beginning, then these can also be added into the list of items to manage. So it's quite a useful tool. Okay. Now, one of the biggest resources used on projects is labour. Okay, it's really essentially our most important resource, and this is often where we if we're doing a really good job and we've priced things accordingly, it's the biggest resource we have to actually make money. So managing that is really important. Within Nimbus, there's lots of different ways to capture time in the field, or capture time, even if you're the foreman on site and, you're keeping an eye on what the guys are doing on the job. There's different mechanisms. And also, often there's a need for some planning. So if I look at my timesheet timeline here, I've got a schedule here for the engineering team, and you can see that there's items scheduled in for this project. I can see here that I've got, I've got Adam working a couple of days on a couple of jobs for the project. Also Blair and myself. If I need to, if we need more resource because things are going a little bit slowly, well, then I can copy those to other members of the team. Okay, from a planning point of view, this is really useful. And then there's different ways in which you can look at the information, whether it be across, this is just showing a week, but you can have month views and so on. And if I want to move to another week and start looking at that, well, it's easy enough just to scroll across and do that. So one of the cool things about the scheduler is that this is also something that can be used in the field by people on phones or tablets. And if you have someone planning the work, then you can also use that as the basis of time recording for the people in the field. So this is my schedule. Now you'll see here that it's by week. If on a phone, that's going to be like a little bit squishy. But if I had a day schedule and you imagine this is just on a phone screen, then the reality is that's a lot smaller. And I can come in here and I can see what's on my schedule for next week. Now, when I'm actually finished my day's work, I can come in here, and if this is actually what I did work on, I can come in here and I can open it up and I can confirm that that's what I've worked on. And you'll see then that changes so that, you know that it's been confirmed. If I also then worked on something else that was on that same project, but potentially a different job, well, then I can add an entry for that and put in my time, say what I did, and that will also update. So you can see that the schedule is a good way of updating what is potentially planned, or even just entering the data. Another way of recording time out on site is via the time portal. So this is designed really nicely to be used on phones. Sorry, I just have to concentrate on my password. Let's see, I'm all sausage fingers today. There we go. Now, when you're out on site, you can enter time. I'm just going to use the default timesheet, and this is what we see on our phone. So if we're wanting to record time, you can see that it's defaulting to the last job I worked on, utilizes the last activity code. So it makes that really easy. So if I want to record that I'm working on a job relating to that project today, I can come in here and I can say that I'm actually doing a little bit of stuff on the site works. And I can just easily put in my time. It was a big hole, took most of the morning, and I can submit that time. So you can see that's another easy way to collect your time on the projects. So then there's other mechanisms as well. Most of you will be familiar with the standard job posting screen, or there's other excuse me, grid forms available for a tablet, whereby you can, if you have a foreman or a project manager on site, it might be that they're responsible for entering the time for the team, and that's something that they can do on a tablet. So yeah, so now what we're going to do is just head back to this report here, and I'm going to click on here, and this, I'm just taking you through to the project manager report. So this is where we might have, we're keeping an eye on things. So you'll see here that I've got our quoted, this is our quoted sale price in here. We've got our jobs. We can see which jobs are variations. We've got our budget, our actual cost, what that estimated margin would be. But you'll see here that I've got some columns dedicated just to labour. It is a valuable resource, and this is often where we can identify if things are not going well or if they're actually going really well. So we've got our budgeted hours, and then our actual hours about what's actually been used, times that's been recorded, and then the balance left. You'll see here that I've got a little bit of colour highlighting if we've gone over budget on our labour. And often this is a good way to utilise colour in the Nimbus reports to highlight exceptions or discrepancies that you want to then be able to dig into. So if I want to dig into the time here, I can click on this link and I can see that basically I just spent a little bit too much time on this design phase, and it was me, but you can dig down into the nitty-gritty of the transactions if that's something that you want to do. Now along here, excuse me, I've got costs split out by certain sections within Nimbus. So our labour, materials, subbies, plant. We've got here a bunch of things that are actually on order, and our total. And here we can see what's been invoiced. Now, if you're really, wanting to dig into certain aspects or areas of your projects, there are other columns available. So for example, if you wanted to have your actual materials budget in here as well, and then showing a variation, you can, all those columns are available within Nimbus, and you can also have variances. So it might be that you actually want a column for invoice cost less invoiced, so that kind of gives you an idea of what you might be looking to invoice the next claim. So, you know, it's a handy report, and it can be tailored and other columns added that are important to you. Another mechanism within here is where we'd potentially log a variation. So it is, I don't think I've ever come across a project that hasn't had a variation. I worked in the construction industry for many years, and yeah, like I said, never not a variation. So we can come in here and click on this header link, automatically allocates the next job for job number for variations. It assigns it to the project here. And so I'm just going to go with how I've been logging these so far. Going to need some extra fencing. Now, often, well, many times a quote is required when a variation is requested. So I'm just going to set that up with a QR status, which means a quote is required. I can put some notes in here. Now, at this point, if I want to, normally when we've been notified that there's a variation request, there might be an email or a document that you've received from the project manager of the client or the architect. So we could drag and drop that into our content store if we wanted to. You know, just dropping something in is pretty easy. Or alternatively, you can even email direct into the job. And then from here, we might open up a quote and build out the quote and send that off to the customer, and also save that to our content store. So, you know, you can see that we can do most of that from this one area. I can open a quote from here if I want to. I can go to the content store. But essentially at this point, the job is logged. They want some sort of idea of the price by the not the 30th of May, the 30th of September. So basically, I've logged that job. It's added it onto the project, but it's also fallen into my to quote queue. Okay, so you can see here that the extra fencing quote is available to be worked on and when it's due. So it's just, you know, a really nice way to log those and keep an eye on things. Okay, so what's next? So we've sort of covered off, you know, managing our materials and some of our labour and things. And you'll notice that I haven't actually touched on subcontractors, although subcontractors, it's a big subject on its own. So subcontractors are managed within Nimbus in a similar way to, you know, any materials that you might be getting on site. Work orders are raised, and when subcontractor claims are processed, if there are retentions on the project, then subcontractors have retentions withheld from them as well. So what we do have though is some reports in Nimbus to highlight retentions and what's owed to them. So we can see here after a claim, we've got retentions on the claim as well as subcontractor retentions, so that we can then see, excuse me, what that relates to, okay, and how much has been retained. As I'm sure you guys are aware, there's been some big changes to the Construction Contract Act around retentions and subcontractors and how they're managed. And often now retentions must be moved to another bank account or another kind of way of bonding that money so that it can't be used up within the main contractor's organisation. And then with recording practical completion dates in Nimbus, when those retentions are released back to the subcontractors, that can be managed accordingly. So we have reports within Nimbus to help us manage that sort of situation. So yeah. So probably the next thing to touch on is claiming. So we need to be able to look at our projects and then produce claims normally on a monthly basis. Now, the actual project claim is not an invoice, so it's really a document that is submitted to the client or their representative. It could be their project manager for consideration, and then when they've looked at that claim, basically they return a payment schedule letting you know what they've agreed to pay. So it's, you know, not necessarily done and dusted. So there's different ways to raise claims or even update information within Nimbus around these. So I'm just going to show you one way at the moment. So one thing about our project claims is that it's really important when producing a claim that you have the claim period. So for the time period that you're producing a claim, this is required by law, I believe, to be on your payment claim. So it's an important piece of information. So this user interface lets us easily update the money, how much we're claiming each month on jobs. It's not the only user interface that we can use, but what it does do really nicely is it lets us work out what we're going to claim and then adjust it if need be, if the payment schedule comes back differently. So you can see here we've got our budgeted information and then what's been previously claimed and the previous percent. And we can see here that we've got our costs to date. So if I want to base my claim based on my costs, so if I know that my costs are accurate, then I can just easily say, well, I want to use my cost percent. Okay, and that actually updates the percent complete to be based on the cost. Otherwise, I could actually use a percent complete that we can record on jobs. And if we look at that, you can see I haven't actually been using that mechanism, but it's something else that's available. So for this instance, I'm going to use my cost. It's given me the new claim, less what's been previously billed. We've got this month's claim. And down here we can see what retentions will be withheld for that. Now there's a couple of ways of producing a claim document. There's, if we click on save here, this saves that information and it can produce a Word document which can be sent out. And this has sort of like some limitations on layout. So what we've found is that more often than not, our customers like to use some form of reporting layout because everyone seems to want something different. So here's another example of a payment claim. So we can see here we've got our client, we've got our claim period, we've got our claim number, and we've split it basically into the base contract information here and then our variations. So yeah, so it kind of splits it out nicely, summarizes the information, and yeah, it looks pretty tidy. So yeah, we've found that most of our customers just like something strategically different. So that's another example of doing a claim. As far as that user interface goes, the reality is that there are other ways to update the information using web reports, either by inline editing or especially when it comes to measure and value, because measure and value is not normally done on a lump sum contract and a percent complete. It's done based on what's actually used. So yeah, we have different user interfaces for that, but there's just limited time to show you all of those today. So when the payment schedule comes back, we can come back into here, and it might be that the customer has decided that they don't actually believe that you are 89% through the design, or well, I would like to think that we're 100% through, but that the foundations or the drain laying isn't totally as far through as they think. They've been down to site and it's something that they disagree on. So we can easily just update the percent complete, or we can even come in and change the amount, and then that updates the claim accordingly. Now, once that's updated, then is the time to raise the invoice. So this can be just done via raising an invoice from here. And really at the end of the day, that's just sort of like ticking the boxes. You know, you need an invoice in your system, they need an invoice, but the most important document here is actually the payment claim, and that claim that you're submitting to them for consideration. Right, so yeah, so that covers off sort of like, I guess, some key areas of project management. I just wanted to show you a couple of other tools that we've got in the toolkit that can help with managing projects and keeping an eye on things. One is our visual project planner. So it's sort of looks like it gives us an ability to view things in a Gantt view. So this initial report shows us, excuse me, our jobs and our tasks around here. We can see that there's no end date set for the extra car parks. So I can come in here and I can actually indicate that we would expect to have them completed by the 10th of October. And that has updated that. Then when I want to check out how that's all looking across the project, I can come into here. So it's another way of managing the jobs and keeping a track on your project. So across the top here, we've got our project timeline, and then we've got our different jobs down here with their anticipated start and finish dates. If there's any dependencies between the jobs, then we can add these easily. And we can also track actually what's been used. So this is the time that has already been used on the foundations, and this is the labour already used on the design. So this helps us keep track of you know, what we're doing. These can be edited, okay, from here, or alternatively, if we wanted to, we can move them using these tools, if I can get it in the right one. So I can just drag and drop that where I want to, and then you can see that actually, okay, I'm not going to do my car parks are going to be moved out later because I know that I've got resource allocated elsewhere. So it's just, you know, a different visual display. You can change your time scale up the top here. So, you know, you can have each week with every work day. The month seems to be, you know, pretty sweet though. So it's just another tool in the toolkit to help you keep an eye on your projects. And then really the last thing that I've probably got to show you is just something that we've been working on recently regarding project dashboards. So Yeah, so as you can see, there's been a significant sort of bit of work on that project dashboard, just around being able to drill down and then drill down to look at individual jobs within the project. I mean, that's just sort of like a flavour of some of the stuff that we can do with managing projects and having that information. So, yeah, so I guess it would be a good opportunity to hand over to Michelle van Dijk, and maybe she can look at some of the questions that you might have.
Awesome, thank you, Michelle. All right, we've got 2 questions so far. Firstly, what is the best way to set up a project or even a variation on a project that is charged or claimed on a charged up basis, i.e. not a lump sum quote with cost being reimbursed on a month-to-month basis in agreement with a client?
Yep. So we do actually have a slightly different user interface for that, in the sense that you don't necessarily have a budget, but you might have rates set in a quote. And so it can still be that you have a project and multiple jobs, but there's rates set against schedules in the quote, instead of actually having a lump sum. And then, for example, if I'm thinking of sort of like roading, for example, if you've got contracts to sort of like mow the side of the berm from here to Murchison, for example, it's sort of like a rate per kilometre. So you might have an agreed rate, but you know, you're doing so many kilometres a month, and then that's what you're actually claiming. So potentially you're still having a project with multiple jobs in it, but the user interface, you wouldn't be obviously going into the contract claim application to put in a percent. You'd be recording how many kilometres against the jobs that you've used. So yeah, we have a way to manage that.
Right. All right. Next question. When an invoice is raised against a project after claim is accepted, does it show on the project it has been invoiced?
Oh, well, yes. So the reality is that, you know, there's an invoice and it's updated the actual customer's account. It highlights that it's a contract invoice, and it also it can be sent and updated to the document store, which reminds me, that's one of the things I forgot to highlight. So this probably answers that a little bit better. If I look at the content store for this particular project that I've been working on here, we've got lots of different things in here, and one of these is actually a invoice. So I can we can view that, and we can see that the contract invoice was issued on the 24th of September, the invoice number, what it was for, and so on. So yeah, so you know, all those aspects just happen as a byproduct of Nimbus. When you produce that invoice, we can save that to the content store. It's emailed out to your customer, and their account's updated accordingly, and you know, normal processes. So yeah. But yeah, you can also see that here we've got some purchase orders. We've got variation requests. So that was the request that came in for the first variation, and any emails as well. So if we look at that, we can see this is the email that was sent to me asking for a variation. So, yep. So hopefully that answers the question, and that the invoice is in here accordingly. Its purposes, we've got a document purpose here, which sort of like categorizes these files into different little folders within here. So, you know, if we wanted to see anything that related to variations, we can search on that, purchases, invoicing, tenders, and so on. Yep.
All right, thank you, Michelle. It doesn't seem like there's any other questions. So obviously everyone's welcome to get in touch after the webinar. So thank you for everyone who joined today's webinar. I'm sure you can all see the value in using our projects module and how it can help you manage your projects more effectively. So just as a reminder, I usually always post the webinar on our website and social media platforms. So be sure to check it out and also follow and subscribe. We will also send out an email afterwards as soon as it's up, so you can re-watch this webinar or share it with your team. And if you have any ideas on future webinar topics, please get in touch. It's always good to hear from you, and it helps everyone. So, and then just before we wrap up, another quick reminder about our client forum that's coming up on the 13th of November. We'd love for you to join us. So if you haven't registered yet, please book your spot. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to connect with our team, see what's coming next, and also learn from other Nimbus users. So definitely we encourage you to be there. So book your spot and we'd love to have you there. Thank you, Michelle. I think that's it from me.
Cheers. Yep. So thanks very much for attending this morning. Like I say, this is really a flavour of some of the things that you can do within Nimbus around project management. There is more. We do have other webinars on quote orders and scheduling and time portal, some of the things that are in the toolkit for managing projects. So these are available on our website. And look, by all means, reach out to Michelle Van Dyke or your consultant or any of our sales and marketing team if you would like some more information. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.
See ya.